Today we're going to be getting into cognitive functions. So we're starting out with sensing and intuiting. Sensing is pretty basic. It's a pretty easy place to start. It's usually just the 5 senses. There's a couple of extra senses, and I'm not talking about the 6th sense, like seeing dead people. I'm talking about senses like proprioception, whenever you feel yourself within a space and you're at rest, or the kinesthetic sense, when you feel yourself in motion and you can understand how much force you need to apply to achieve a certain result. There's also another sense that I personally struggle with called interoception, which is interpreting your sort of inner bodily functions, maybe more of your autonomic sort of functions that are just kind of happening, like hunger, how hot or cold you are. I can't really seem to regulate that for myself. I'm always cold. Various stuff like keeping track of the levels and how the environment affects you, and I would kind of think of that as SI. But all of that might be considered under the umbrella of sensing. Sensing is becoming aware of the tangible. Focus is on the actual, on experienced facts and data, the reality of things, making the reality more clear and vivid. It's an active perceptual process, being drawn outward to what is experienced and acting on concrete realities of a situation or inward recollections of familiar experiences. Interesting. Okay, so in comparison, intuiting is becoming aware of the abstract. So we have symbols, conceptual patterns, and meanings, knowing of what something means. I mean, I always have some issues with the way that intuition is described because it's described as this sort of mystical force, which is not always necessarily true. Often involves bringing together or forming ideas in novel ways. Yeah, maybe. I think that's giving it too much credit. Process is triggered by an external event. I would say that's true. Sometimes the information just seems to present itself to our awareness. I think part of being sapient in being a human being is this higher level order of thinking, which comes with abstraction. So let's look at extroverted sensing. When we become aware of what is in the physical world in rich detail, may be drawn to act on experience to get an immediate results, notice relevant facts, occurrences in a sea of data and experiences, learning all of the facts we can about the immediate context or area of focus, what goes on in the context, seeking more and more. Okay. So whether it's extroverted sensing or extroverted intuition, it's like you're seeking more. You have a very open-ended relationship with the information you're taking in. And you're not particularly attached to any of these ideas, any of these senses. You're experiencing them all and you want to experience more. You want to keep yourself open to the experience of sensory information or ideas, possibilities, abstractions. Okay, follow exciting physical impulses or instincts? Sure. Thrill of action, tend to be thrill seekers, yep. Present moment, yeah. Okay, a oneness with the physical world? It starts getting a little bit. Total absorption as we move, touch, and sense. I mean, I think this description is the most heightened form of extroverted sensing, but you can have like a chill, more tame relationship with your extroverted sensing. Process involves instantly reading cues to see how far we can go in a situation and still get the impact we want, or respond to the situation with presence. Okay, I don't entirely disagree. I do think this description is very much in the dominant position of extroverted sensing when it's really like turned on, and the description almost reads as kind of hedonistic, where you're seeking out those sensory impulses and you can't really control yourself. That's what it reads to me, but that's not necessarily always true. Sometimes you just like have a calm, chill lifestyle and you're just vibing, you know? And maybe your reflexes and your senses are just well attuned to your environment. If we go over to extroverted intuition, this one I might disagree with. I have NI. I don't necessarily have extroverted, but we'll see. I've witnessed a lot of extroverted intuition because NE is attracted to me. Involves noticing hidden meanings. If you ever see the term hidden meanings pop up on a test, like an MBTI test, you're probably going to want to associate that with NE, even though I think it's ridiculous. I don't tend to think that meanings are really hidden. I think there's just like meanings that are beyond what is immediately available, and you might have to explore further to try to guess at that or get a perspective or a frame or a perimeter on what that extra meaning might be. Often entertaining a wealth of possible interpretations from just one idea. Yes, so that's the SI. So if you're talking about an ENFP or ENTP who has extroverted intuition in the dominant slot, any kind of like forces your sensory to be personalized. So you're personalizing the sensory, and then you're exploding into possibilities and ideas. Seeing things as if possible representations of reality. Using this process, we can juggle many different ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and meanings in our mind at once, with the possibility that they are all true. Yes, NI does that too. We'll get to NI, I guess, but just as a comparison to NE, whenever I'm taking in information, I can see the possibilities, but I have the intention of picking and choosing the possibilities and then structuring around those. This is like weaving themes and threads together. We don't know the weave until a thought thread appears or is drawn out in the interaction of thoughts, often brought in from other contexts. Other contexts, yes. NE has a very associative thought process. It can grab from many different aspects of life that it's seeing and sort of draw together patterns within various different fields. It's very interesting. Thus, a strategy or concept often emerges from the here and now interactions, not appearing as a whole beforehand. Using this process, we can really appreciate brainstorming and trust what emerges. I take issue with that because brainstorming is an activity that any function can technically perform, or any combination of functions. I don't think you have to be particularly high with extroverted intuition to participate in brainstorming. I think it's always great to have someone with high extroverted intuition within your brainstorming sessions because it's always fun and entertaining and kind of enlightening, but it's not necessary. I don't think we should give brainstorming to any DOMs. I don't think they should own that. Extroverted intuiting also can involve catalyzing people, extemporaneously shaping situations, spreading an atmosphere of change through emergent leadership. It's very optimistic. It's a very optimistic view of like what NE is capable of. It is very catalyzing. Whenever you see someone with so much bounding energy moving towards what is possible, you kind of get excited yourself and you feel inspired. That's why I like being around NE, because this sort of sense of inspiration, and then NI has the grit to take that idea and form action from it. I can't speak for all of NI, but in order to move forward, you also often have to narrow down, and you have to choose, and you have to decide. Okay, so we talked about extroverted intuiting, yes. And like I was saying, the counterpart of extroverted intuiting is often introverting the sensing function. The fact that you have such a strong preference for the abstract means that you have to limit your interaction with the sensory. And your interaction with the sensory then becomes very personalized. Instead of being out there taking in every single sensory experience, you're selecting specific sensory experiences in discrete little packets, and you're retaining that and personalizing it. And then, like I said, from that, I think you're kind of moving into the many possibilities from these discrete packets of sensory information. So what is SI, introverted sensing? Often involves storing data and information, then comparing and contrasting the current situation with similar ones. Okay. The immediate experience or words are instantly linked with prior experiences. So I think that's true, and we register a similarity or difference. But SI isn't the only thing that does this. I feel like TI can look for inconsistencies whenever it's validating information. I feel like NI can register similarities and differences. Maybe introverted sensing is kind of the best, but I don't think it necessarily owns contrast. For example, noticing that some food, okay, there's a distinction, right? Because it's like, what type of information are you comparing and contrasting? Well, in this case, it's comparing and contrasting sensory data. to past sensory data, because introverted sensing is looking at how the environment impacts the self. It personalizes the sensory. Is this similar or different to my past experiences? And it kind of like builds its structure from that. Sometimes a feeling associated with the recalled image comes into our awareness along with the information itself. Then the image can be so strong our body responds as if reliving the experience. See, I feel like that can be true even if you don't have a necessarily strong relationship with SI, because I feel like that's more of a fact of memory. There's been studies that higher, more intensity of emotion can lead to more memorable memories. When you're going into that memory, it feels like maybe you're reliving it because of the intensity of it. So it might just depend on how you store your memory. A lot of my memory is built upon patterns, and it feels like I'm reliving patterns. I'm not reliving the details of specific sensory experiences. It's just I have this bodily sense that this has happened before because I'm reliving the memory of patterns that I've noted that have been personalized to me. So it's different, like I don't have the specific sense detail. I have a different kind of memory because I'm encoding my memory differently from someone who has introverted sensing. The process also involves reviewing the past to draw on the lessons of history, hindsight, and experience. With introverted sensing, there is often great attention to detail and getting a clear picture of goals and objectives of what is to happen. There can be a oneness with ageless customs that helps sustain civilization and culture and protect what is known and long-lasting even while what is reliable changes. Maybe it's because, you're reflecting on the past, so there's a desire to carry forward that past, and maybe a greater resistance to change, because you have personalized those sensory experiences. And I think kind of for the sake of efficiency, you're probably wanting to continue that because you have discovered what has made you feel good, what has kept you in balance, what is maintaining your mental health and your body and all of your systems. If you have really found that and unlocked that for yourself, why wouldn't you want to continue exploiting that to continue feeling good and balanced within yourself? Let's look at my darling baby, Introverted Intuition. I'm probably not going to like the description here, so bear with me. Introverted intuiting involves synthesizing the seemingly paradoxical or contradictory. Yes, I do agree with that. And with NI, I'm attracted to the paradoxical or the contradictory. Because, you see, if you hold multiple perspectives in your mind at one time and you shift the perspective, you understand that something that seemed paradoxical from one angle, that seemed contradictory from one angle, once you shift it, it's no longer a paradox, which takes understanding to a new level. Using this process, we can have moments when completely new, unimagined realizations come to us. I think that's incorrect. I don't think it's completely new, unimagined, because we're taking in a lot of, so like I said, extroverted intuition and introverted sensing feed into each other, but the same is true with extroverted sensing and introverted intuition. So if you have someone like an introverted intuition dom, like myself, I am taking in, like my last function is extroverted sensing. I don't have a preference for it, but I am taking in that outside information just like anyone else would be. I might be taking it in passively. I might not notice that I'm picking up on certain details at certain times. Maybe it's not as actively engaged. Maybe I miss a lot of details, and that's fine. But I am still taking in information and processing it. The TE, the extroverted thinking, likes to reference a lot of things that are functional within reality. A lot of benchmarking, a lot of studies, a lot of research, a lot of empirical data is referenced by extroverted thinking. So whenever I come to some sort of new understanding, and this can happen with FI too, as I sort of process emotional data and I take that in and I personalize that to myself and I kind of construct my values and my identity and beliefs and relationships with other individuals. Whenever I come to new insights or realizations when NI is paired with TE or FI, it's not completely new or unimagined. It's coming from a source. it has a rooted source within reality. And if someone is seeing this as mystical, they're not doing the homework to arrive at the place I have arrived. Now, it's really hard to explain the refinement and the narrowing down that introverted intuition does when paired with, say, extroverted thinking or introverted feeling, but it's there. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I have a process and it's coming from a place, but because the information that is being scoped and taken in is so vast, and because it's being consolidated so densely and heavily into this insight, that people can't follow all the time what is happening, which is unfortunate because it's really hard to explain myself. Not for lack of trying, because I do sometimes. Sometimes I'm just like, bro, if you can't follow, it's fine. It's like, whatever, I'll just be obtuse and I'll just, you can get on with your life. You're clearly not interested, so it's fine. So I don't love the descriptions here. A disengagement from interactions in the room occurs. That's so rude. So, I mean, yeah, I can choose to do that, but like, why are you putting that on me? Followed by a sudden aha, or that's it. I don't think I've ever heard an INTJ explode with enthusiasm. Like, that's it. I've done it. I have come up with the solution. I have seen something new. My whole world has shifted. Aha. I've never seen that unless it's like a parody. It's really silly. That's something any would do. That's something extroverted intuition would do. Aha. It's so dumb. So I often listen to people's vocalizations and the little snippets of like vamping or words that they intermittently put in their language, like little language tags. And one of the language tags that I think can occur with NI when they're tracking someone else's thoughts and they're listening to someone else and they're trying to exhibit understanding. I know I do this. Maybe other INTJs can comment, but I will often find myself saying, I see. I see. In my mind's eye, I am following the logic of what you're saying, and I understand you. I see you, I understand you. But never aha. It's so silly. Okay, now we're gonna get into some other weird mystical stuff. Sense of the future. And the realizations that come from introverted intuiting have a sureness. That's true. There is a certain kind of certainty to it. But I think it's because INTJs, I'm not sure about INFJs if they feel the same way, but INTJs definitely have a certainty, I think, to their will and their introverted intuition. I think there's a comfort with the concept of uncertainty, or there's a comfort with uncertainty within concepts, if that makes sense. Now, I don't personally like uncertainty within my extroverted sensing. If there are objects flying at my head, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not going to catch it. It's going to smack me upside the head, and if it's a large, blunt object, there might be a concussion involved, because there's no way I'm dodging that shit. I don't like uncertainty when it comes to the sensory. I am going to get into a car accident and die. But existential uncertainty, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm totally chill. An imperative quality that seem to demand action and help us stay focused. I think focus is a big one, unless you have ADHD. I mean, because that can happen with INTJs just like anyone else, or INFJs. Focused on fulfilling our vision or dream of how things will be in the future. Using this process, we might rely on a focal device or symbolic action to predict, enlighten, or transform. It's kind of weird language. NITE wouldn't say that, probably. We could find ourselves laying out how the future will unfold based on unseen trends and telling signs. Unseen trends. What is that? Unseen by who? If NI is acting on a trend, then we've seen it. It is a seen trend. We're responding to it. We're acting upon it. It's not an unseen trend. Is this what? Unseen to the larger universe? People are misunderstanding where we're going? I don't know. It's interesting, especially when you get into like finance and you talk about speculative markets and this idea of understanding the underlying economic value of a company and the idea of the market. So the sort of like the consensus of minds that are out in the world. The idea of the market pricing information into their estimates of what the value, the underlying value of something is. So I don't think trends are unseen. If trends are unseen, then you're not looking very hard. I think you should always be skeptical of information, and maybe you should find out for yourself whether the speculations that others have are valid. But I don't like this idea of unseen trends. This process can involve working out complex concepts, very true, or systems, very true, of thinking or conceiving of symbolic or novel ways to understand things that are universal. Yeah, I mean, sort of like the narrowing down of concepts. I kind of think of it as one trick taught to many ponies in different contexts. So the different ponies are in different stables, and maybe they're going to perform in different events. So you got to kind of like modify this one trick. But if you have like one really good trick, you kind of standardize it across many ponies. It's very effective and efficient. So if you have a robust idea, it's almost like a springboard. You have this very like robust insight, this knowledge of how something functions at its core. And you take that sort of universal idea, and it's the seed, and you plant it within a new context. And once you plant it within the context, then you can start taking in attributes of the surrounding context so that the seed develops into a model that is effective or fit to the purpose to which you are applying it. That's kind of my explanation of some of how I use my NI transferable skills and modeling to different situations. It's a very NITE approach, so I can understand if INFJs don't agree, because they're probably looking at values and value systems, whereas I'm looking at a lot of functionality. It can lead to creating transcendent experiences or solutions. Again, y'all need to stop with your mystical talk. You're giving me too much credit, and I don't want it. I don't want it. Okay, so that is the dichotomy of the perceiving functions between sensing and intuiting. Let me know how you feel about these functions, whichever ones you have. Do you agree with this book or anything that I've said in addition to this book? Let me know.